Hello to everybody. My name is Dr. Lesia Waschuk, and I am the Compliance and Education Specialist at Prep Doctors, and I'm very happy to be here. I've been working at Prep Doctors for 2 years now, and previously I did a whole bunch of different things that maybe, depending on how the conversation goes, I may mention in the prelude to some of my questions. I'm going to introduce Dr. Marwan Hameed, and he's had a really interesting career. I'll let him tell you more about that, but I'm going to tell you about his credentials, qualifications, and his affiliations. So he attained his Bachelor of Dental Surgery in Iraq in 1999. After that, he attained his Doctor of Dental Medicine at the University of British Columbia in 2011. He's a member of the International Congress of Oral Implantologists. He's a member of the American Academy of Oral Implantologists. He's a founding member of the Canadian Iraqi Dental Society, and he is the CEO of Smiles of Canada. And it is Smiles of Canada that we will be talking primarily about today. And I would like to now invite Dr. Marwan to speak a little bit about himself, a lot about Smiles of Canada, and about the opportunities that are available now in his dental practices. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Waschuk. I really appreciate this kind introduction. I want to thank Prep Doctor for giving me the opportunity today to speak to you all. And I appreciate all the participants who dedicated some time today for this informal session where we're going to talk about different options, as you mentioned, DSO versus solo, Ontario versus out of the province. I'm going to maybe shed a bit of light about some questions you may have, and anyone has questions, feel free to ask them at any time and we can certainly answer them. And if I don't have an answer, I'll make sure I'll get you an answer within a day or two maximum. So I think the introduction mentioned a bit more, mentioned everything about what I've done so far, but I can just add that I was myself an early student of Prep Doctor when it was forming. I mentioned this to Dr. Waschuk herself, that Dr. Marwan Reyes, as he was a student in his final year at U of T, he used to assist me quite often with my preppings, and we used to go to his apartment in Toronto where he used to teach me how to put the rubber dam. So he's a good friend, a good colleague, and an amazing advisor when we need him. And I know the caliber and I know the high standards that Prep Doctor offers. And that's why I'm interested in spending this hour and so with you guys all to discuss this, because definitely it's just giving back to Prep Doctor for all the great things they've done for me. And hopefully you guys will be in an amazing positions in the very near future. So I'll get to it. And again, please interrupt me or ask any question you need. DSO. DSO stands for Dental Services Organization. In other words, it's an organization that manages and owns multiple practices. These practices could be in Toronto, could be in Vancouver. It could be in different spots, but they are all managed by one organization. So the protocols, the health and safety, the instruments, the material, the guidelines are all the same, streamlined all across the board. So if we do a little comparison between DSO versus solo, solo is the traditional dental practice. This is the old-fashioned way of things where a dentist decides to open a practice somewhere and he gets to work on it until he gets very busy. And then he decides, he or she, of course, decides getting a dental associate who will come and help him or her with their patient load. And that's how a practice grows. This is the traditional, let's call it standard old-fashioned way of things being done. However, in the States, and before that, in fact, it started in Hong Kong, the newer model where business side of dentistry came in picture, how should I put it? Companies started acquiring offices, and I'm pretty sure you're not familiar with many good names here, such as Dental Corp, 123 Dental, Ultima, until they were bought recently, and a few others. Those are the known, well-known, excuse me, DSOs. However, there are some smaller scale DSOs, such as the one that I am the CEO of, which is Smiles of Canada. And of course, there are others where we run a little bit smaller organization, because DSO could be so big where they could own 200, 300. And in the States, there are some DSOs that may own 300, 400 offices. And there are smaller ones. And each one has advantages and disadvantages, in my humble opinion. Of course, subject to discussion. But a solo practice, back to that, has advantages. One of the beautiful advantages that it offers is sustainability, stability. A person wakes up in the morning, gets his breakfast, drives to an office, starts at 9 or 8, finishes at 4 or 5, go back home and wake up next morning and do it all over again. So it's stable. And that is beautiful, if you will, to certain individuals, because again, we are different. I like to wear a white shirt. There is another person who likes a blue shirt.
So you're freezing up a little bit. And I did have a question relating to the advantages of solo practice. And are you speaking about, the stability that you mentioned? Is that for the principal or is that for the associate? Because I think that sometimes, not all practices are equally busy. And I'm not 100%. Sure that the associate may have a full-time position in
well said. Well said. You see, that's one of the disadvantages, in my humble opinion, in the solo practices, because I've worked in solo practices historically, and I worked in DSOs, and many good people there that did the same. The solo practice, usually the focus is always, without declaring, again, that's my personal opinion, is on the principal dentist, because he or she needs to be busy, and eventually they transfer over the extra, again, I'm emphasizing the word extra load, to the associate. So we used to struggle trying to fill our own schedule. We used to go do those recalls and build up all those treatment plans. And again, unfortunately, again, it's an experience base, but we see the big cases being given to the principal, while the smaller cases are not. Even the patient division, if I may put it that way, the people with the double insurance happens to be fallen with the owner for obvious reasons, because the owner want to build his or her practice, which is a standard procedure, don't get me wrong. So the disadvantage, if you will, of a solo practice, it's going to take longer to build up the patient base, and it's going to take longer to build up a higher income, if I may put it that way. And again, the other part that I noticed in a solo, within bigger cities, of course, it takes longer to build the skill set. And that is, to me, was an important part of it. Now, DSO, if I can jump to the other part of this equation, it's an organization where there are many locations. So there is no principal dentist that's going to be sitting next to me 24/7. In other words, I will be having a bit of ownership of my patients. I will be having a bit of freedom, if I may put it that way. Of course, respecting the Royal College guidelines and ethics that we all learned, and you guys have learned it quite well, or will be learning it quite well at Prep Doctor. But eventually, I have an autonomy, if you will, to be able to treatment plan from A to Z, to be able to refer cases to a specialist if I find that necessary, or keep cases to myself so I can do more of those smaller endos and such. If I may just share some side to this, just recently, I had a very interesting discussion, without bringing names, with a gentleman who just graduated from Prep Doctor, and we just celebrated him getting his license with us in Newfoundland a week ago. And he took an amazing endo course by Dr. Arrayes at Prep Doctor. So I actually encouraged him to improve his endo skills. And he said, Dr. Arrayes is doing the course, and I know what Marwan does. And I told him, you better take that course. It's a good course. And he did. It was 2 or 3 day course, very busy, where he got exposed to a lot of different scenarios and options and models and systems, if you will. However, he brought up a concern that he said, okay, now how am I going to execute what I've learned? And I told him, come over to my office. He was shadowing with me in Waterdown, and I intentionally booked 3, 4 root canals side by side. So he started relating the good things he learned. And Dr. Waschuk mentioned to me that in Prep Doctor, you guys actually go all the way to do it on model teeth, which is phenomenal. However, now we reached the model teeth, which is amazing. Now it's time to get the hands wet and actually get into the mouth and do it live. So the challenge in bigger cities such as Toronto, if I may, or Mississauga, or Brampton, or Hamilton, is that getting those cases on a regular basis, whether it's endo, ortho, extraction, you name it, cannot always be guaranteed. Eventually, if you learn something really good and don't have a chance to execute it quickly, there is a good chance that you start, that skill set starts wearing off a bit until you need another refresher. I personally fell on that myself.
There are so many questions that I have that I wanted to ask you so far. So,
Yes.
and I do want to say a couple of things about my own experience, if I may, about this idea of you kind of, I don't remember the wording that you used, but that you lose your skills, because I didn't practice for 23 years, and I came to Prep Doctors and I said, I want to take your courses because I know that you're really good at hands-on education. And so I've taken that endo course that you're talking about myself. And in addition to the models, right? So there is an acrylic model that they can see through. There's extracted teeth they work on. They also work on a cadaver head, and they have a chance to do 2 different systems, rotary systems for
the Cybron and the Pro Taper.
Yeah,
I know.
And then 2 different systems for obturation. Anyway, so the idea of, first of all, how many practices do you have, and in which provinces do you have them?
I have currently 18, and there's another 2 to 3 to be added in the very, very near future, fingers crossed. And the provinces that we have them in are Newfoundland, Ontario, Manitoba. Those are the bigger ones. The smaller ones are Nova Scotia and Alberta right now. And we have 2 that we're building in Dubai. Yeah.
Wow. And, I think I was struck by the fact that you graduated from dental school in Canada in 2011, which is also when Prep Doctors was founded. I mean, I know that Dr. Marwan was doing some tutoring even before that. And I had no idea that, you've known them much longer than I have.
Yes.
So I think you're a friend of Prep Doctors. Yeah.
Dr. Marwan was an amazing support for me when I was studying until I get to school, because at that time we didn't have the good fortune of getting direct licensing. And when I was in Vancouver, I used to always call him for help. He was always there for me. And when I graduated, and I pulled the first wisdom tooth and caused a lot of bleeding, and I couldn't pull it. And I got again, just for the records, I got a complaint at the college, and I panicked. And I'm sorry to put it that way. In our course, in our career, we may get into those trickier situations. The key is to get the proper support. And I cannot emphasize how important that is. And guidance. To me, Marwan Reyes was the one who gave me that guidance, because I didn't know what to do. And I'm pretty sure you guys will have the same guidance from him or Prep Doctor, or if we happen to work together in the future, we will all be there to help you out when you break that file, and you will, or when you pull that tooth and part of it breaks, and you will. And this is part of the beauty of learning dentistry as we go. Okay, so and the purpose of today's webinar is to talk about DSOs, and you've explained that very well. We know that you have practices in 5 provinces and overseas, and you and I did some preparation for this webinar. The attendees should know that we did talk a little bit to get to know each other and to decide what we were going to talk about today. So the mentorship and the coaching, that is possible in your particular setup. So on the one hand, dentists will have autonomy in terms of their treatment planning. They may be the primary dentist in one of your locations if they're adventurous enough to go to a more remote office, which I'd love for you to talk about what the benefits are of that as well. But let's talk about coaching. What does that look like in your DSO? And you personally, how will you assist a new dentist to gain confidence in those skills they may have learned here or in another course? Okay, well, probably the best way to answer that question is to share with you the latest addition to our family from Prep Doctor. The gentleman, again, is going to start his work with us September the 12th. We're all excited for him. However, usually our way of inbounding any member, especially dentists, is we first do our interviewing to make sure that we're all fit. So he fits in our organization and he's happy to join us and he finds himself or she a good match and comfortable, of course. Then we start studying together his or her skill sets. What's their strong points and what's their, let's call it, not so strong points. Then we start talking about how can we grow the part that we all feel needs improvement. And we start creating, let's call it, a roadmap. So, for example, the latest edition, again, maybe he may not want to share his info yet, but he noticed that he likes to improve on his communication skills. So what we've done over the past, let's call it, month of onboarding process, he used to come to my office a few days with me because I have a focus of practice personally on surgeries and smile makeovers, while my associates, they enjoy, and partners, they enjoy the general dentistry from root canals and fillings and such. So we started to strategically place him in different offices within where he lives. So it won't be how I do my consults, communication skills. I shared with him, I mean, there are certain formats, how we can do proper presentation, how we can provide the options, and no option is always an option, along with many other aspects of the flow of patient care. Endo, for example, again, I lined up cases of endo and he was assisting me watching those endos and assisting in some surgeries. Wisdom extraction, actually, he was helping me with the suction and such because I wanted him to see live how I'm doing it in case he has passion for it or not, of course. My associates and my partners as well are part of the mix. And he was assisting and he was attending and shadowing and asking questions on a regular basis. They start sending me x-rays. They might want to consult me. How would you deal with this particular scenario? Oh, Dr. Marwan, I broke a file. What would we do? And then we start troubleshooting it. We start by trying to figure what the problem is and how it happened and what can we do to avoid it in the future, if possible, if it's beyond, if it's within our reach, of course. And how do we handle these cases? I would say, I mean, again, I've been practicing in Canada now for 11 years. I think I've seen quite a bit of different scenarios and how they can go right, how can they turn ugly, if you will, how could a patient complain, or how could, there are many aspects to the mix, not trying to stress anyone, but I would say, I mean, it's a mix of different things that needs to be looked into. So the coaching, answering your question, from me, my associates, my team, my managers, sometimes the coaching is not even dental. Sometimes it's the clinical side, the business side, the management side, the record keeping, the consenting, etc. So all the team are at their reach to answer questions when they present and answer them in a timely fashion. So some dentists, answering the second part of your question, they come to Canada with a very vast experience in certain disciplines, more than mine probably, and more than my associates and partners. And they will say, doctor, I used to have my own practice in India or in Iraq or wherever, and I'm kind of comfortable with the dental side. Then, and I hired a gentleman 2 years ago from Prep Doctor who said, doctor, I want an office to myself because my objective is I want to make a high income because I am rural. The reason I'm going rural, he was very blunt about it and I appreciate it. He said, I'm going rural for a reason. I want to make higher income and then I will work for 2 years, make quadruple what my fellow students, doctors are doing in Ontario. So I can expedite my growth, come back to Ontario, buy a practice cash without getting a loan. And this is my plan. Wow. Then now we understand his plan. Beautiful. We supported him. And Dr. Allen is now moving to Ontario after 2 years in Newfoundland. And actually he's doing marvelous, marvelous, marvelous. So there are these kind of paid doctors. There's others who will say, no, I don't want to be in an office by myself because I still in my learning phase. I don't want to be stuck in an office where I break that file and I don't know what to do. And you know what? That is very fair. And these are the doctors that we plug them in an office with another senior dentist They will still make that income, but they will always have that senior dentist to support them when they need support. Now, that's one of the other beauties of DSO. The support could be from an office or a doctor who is sitting in a chair next to you, or it could be from the city next door to your city to provide support.
So I'm very happy to report we have one question in the Q&A and somebody has raised their hand. So I'm going to say the Q&A is from a dentist who lives in Halifax and is looking for an opportunity to work in Nova Scotia if possible. So we are, in answer to that doctor, and I'm not going to name them, we will have a registration link, to help, anybody who finds out about opportunities through us will be able to reach Dr. Marwan that way. In terms of sort of indicating your interest in particular places. And there's a sort of a questionnaire as to where you would be willing to move to. So to the doctor who sent the question in the Q&A, you will have a way of applying for positions that Dr. Marwan is mentioning, or, the practice locations that he's mentioning so far. I kind of want to sum up. So you have, 18 practices in 5 different provinces, and you are going to be adding some more to the Smiles of Canada family. It sounds like you have a real learning organization, and so that everybody is available, not just clinicians, but also people who work in the dental offices and people who are involved in managing the offices, are available to help a new associate to sort of find their feet, let's say, to learn about the patients that they're going to be treating, to take on the new skills that they want to practice, and if and when something happens that they haven't expected or that they don't know how to resolve themselves, people are they're just a phone call away. Everybody's available. Now, you did mention to me when we were speaking off camera that you, for instance, Newfoundland, right? Because we advertise this event as talking about Eastern Canada, so let's talk about the Maritimes.
Okay.
One of our attendees is interested in Nova Scotia, so we know you have practices there as well. But in Newfoundland, there's some special, I think, features, I guess, of going there. And you did say that you do go to Newfoundland every once in a while to practice. So you are, I guess, in different locations as well, and available for shadowing, observing, and as you said, even assisting to get that perfect view of what's going on and to be able to ask you questions about what's happening. So tell me about Newfoundland, and tell me about if somebody was willing to go to Newfoundland, let's say to replace the doctor who's leaving, how could you help them?
Okay. Well, Newfoundland, as a start, as you all may know, it's a beautiful island in the far eastern side of Canada. If I can start by mentioning the province as an overall, it has some great advantages where living expenses are way less than Ontario. Weather-wise, they do get their fair amount of snow, of course. People are considered, and it's common knowledge, one of the nicest people in Canada, the friendliest. In Newfoundland, I happen to have five offices right now, from coast to coast in that island, that I may have positions in as we speak. I think I know already I have 3 to be filled, 3 or 4 actually. What we do is that Newfoundland itself, if you want to compare it to Ontario, it has a capital, which is St. John's, and it has another major city that's 3 hours north of it called Gander, and they all have airports that you can fly directly from Toronto to. And there are some other cities that are within an hour reach from those 2 major cities. What we do is that for any candidates who are interested in applying to Newfoundland's positions, what we do, we have an initial interview, of course, as I mentioned, and make sure that there is common interest and a good fit for both parties. And what we do, we offer, we help them with their relocation. So we offer plane tickets initially to go there. We help them with the transportation. We give them a car, SUV, for the first month to help them get used to the way of the land. Because again, when you go to a newer place, whether it's Newfoundland, Manitoba, or wherever, one of the things that's going to be probably concerning or scary is I'm going to an unknown country, unknown city. I don't know anybody in it. I don't know how to start. So basically, part of our onboarding process is we help you out with those challenges. So we usually book a hotel for a month for you to stay at. You will have a car, you will have that air ticket to make sure that it gives you enough time to feel comfortable, to love that practice, find a place to rent. We even have connections in helping you look for a place to rent eventually and settle in. So that's some of the support to help you when you move, East Coast or West, wherever the decision is meant to be. Back to the Newfoundland. Newfoundland, if you compare it to Ontario, in terms of the dental side now, Ontario, GTA, as you know, there is a dentist by every corner nowadays. I am talking to you right now from my house in Oakville, and the intersection at Dundas and Niagara in front of me. At that intersection, there are 5 clinics. I mean, 2 on one corner and 1 on each corner. So nowadays, when I speak to my real estate broker friends, they kind of joke about it, that now we see more dentists than Tim Hortons. What that tells us that, of course, if you think about it, that there are so many dentists, and that's beautiful for the public, but is it so beautiful for us in terms of production, in terms of making that income that made us all come to Canada for, to support our families and kids and parents and such? That's when you start thinking, okay, maybe GTA is beautiful, but sometimes the priority is more than just the beauty of Toronto. If I can share with you this interesting discussion I had with one of other good friends of mine who owns another big DSO. He told me the other day, he told me, Marwan, there are 2 kinds of them, especially dentists. There is the person who wants an easy life. He likes to have his friends, his favorite restaurant. He likes to go to a coffee shop to enjoy that cup of coffee. He wants his mother-in-law to be close. She wants her best friend to be next door. So they want comfort. So that comes with a cost. And that cost is that their dental curve, learning curve, if you will be slower because they're going to be in a much, much, much more competitive environment. And their income will be mediocre, or maybe rephrase it, will be more average because they don't have the chance. They will sit in that office. Their schedule is filled with holes. They're going to be stressed. They will go try to speak to the manager, kind of begging for a patient, and then they will start throwing some breadcrumbs of patients at them. And then guess what? They will be getting the people with the not so amazing insurance. So they will do 11 fillings to bill the same as what the other dentist is billing with 1 procedure. And that is what we all been through. I'm sorry, I'm sharing with you some of the things, but this is reality. This is life. So if I choose the better lifestyle, if I may say, then I am willing to put a little sacrifice on the dental and the financial rewards. And I'm okay with that. I'm going to delay making money and delay being busy because in return, I'm enjoying living in Oakville in my scenario. But there is another group of people or dentists who are more aggressive or progressive. Their priorities are different. Like Dr. Allen, who is an amazing fellow that was a prep doctor graduate. From the get-go, I loved it how he said it. He said, I want this, and I'm willing to let go of that. So this fine gentleman is working in Gander, Newfoundland. It's a town that probably has 8,000 people with only 3 or maybe 4 offices now. So the per capita, when you do the math, in Mississauga, which I was practicing today in Square One, my office is a bigger office, but when I do the calculation in Mississauga, number of dentists divided by number of patients or population, or excuse me, number of population by dentist, you're going to find that the number of dentists is so high. So when you get new patients every month, you will get 20, maybe 30. And this is kind of the average in an office, 35 in a good month. When you go to a place like Newfoundland or Manitoba, the numbers are quite different because it's the other way around. The number of dentists is so low, and the dentists there are aging and they are in their retirement. So there's no new replenishment of new dentists. So guess where those patients are going to go? They're going to be on a waiting line. Newfoundland, particularly, the wait line on a root canal specialist now is 1 year. So if you want to do a molar endo, and it's a broken file or it's a redo of an endo that was done a million years ago, and you want to refer him to a specialist, yes, you will. But guess what? You're going to tell the patient, but unfortunately, though, actually, that happened to me last week in Torbay, in Newfoundland. We were referring a patient out, and I told him, I'm so sorry to mention to you that the waiting time is now 13 months. So what does that tell you? It tells you that it's the other way around, and dentistry there, you get to see abundance, and you get to build up your schedule, and you get to bill, and you get to do the complex cases that you may not have the luxury of doing on a daily basis in bigger cities until you build that skill set or confidence.
Thank you. I mean, you've hit on a bunch of different things. And I guess, I'm looking from my perspective of, I've been in dentistry for more than 30 years. Now, I haven't practiced for 30 years, but I have spoken with many, many dentists when I was at the regulatory body. I've taught at the dental schools, and I have many colleagues, right, because of the choices I've made in my career. I think that, with the cost of living in the big urban centers, and not just the cities, but the surrounding areas, it's hard. I worry as an educator that sometimes if you go to work someplace where you have to compete for patients, maybe they're going to learn the wrong things from the wrong principal. If they end up in an office where the doctor's doing some unethical things to try to attract patients or to create work for themselves or whatever it may be. I mean, those are some pretty awful situations, right? But unfortunately, right? People who do those kinds of things say this is what you have to do to get patients. I mean, I think that going where there's need, as you've said, particularly, I mean, not only, but particularly if you're a specialist from back home, and that there is no registered specialist, in a particular area of a particular province. I mean, why not do it? And what a great way to get to see the city.
Absolutely.
I mean, not just the city, I meant the country. Like, I think that if I had my career to do over, right? I always wanted to travel. Okay. So I haven't done much traveling, but I think that if I could have, practice in one place for a while as an associate, so not set down roots, but practice to really get to know the area, move somewhere else. I mean, what a great way to see Canada without actually having to make the commitment of having to take care of your patients for a long time. I mean, you want to stay long enough that you get to see whether your work works, that you get to learn all about that particular area and whether you want to stay.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, you don't have to stay if you're an associate, right? But let's say that they went to Newfoundland and you helped them to move. How long, might you want them to stay in that case where you are doing more for that associate than for somebody in one of your Ontario more urban locations?
Basically depends on the type of assistance that we provide. If it is involving the residents for a month and a car and plane and such, we'd like to have them there for at least 2 years to get them comfortable. And usually 2 years is reasonable for them because that will get them that high experience and financial rewards that probably they're after. And then some of them, actually quite few, decided to stay, surprisingly. And couple, they know they wanted to come back because, I mean, some, they want to get married, they want to buy their house and such. So everyone is different. I mean, I have an associate who went to Torbay, and after a year, he ended up buying a house, which is indicating, and he moved his wife, and he had 2 baby daughters there, God bless him. So the concept is, I mean, it's a case by case, and each one has a different agenda and expectations that we need to, I mean, it would be nice for him or her to share with us so we can help him or her in getting that goal, of course, without affecting the workflow. I mean, if they want to stay for a year, it would be lovely for them to tell me that from the very beginning, so we can plan things according to that. Now, the other advantage of the DSO setup, going to Newfoundland, he or she decides to go to Newfoundland. After a year, they love it, but they have to come back home for a specific reason. Home means, let's call it Ontario. I mean, in many scenarios, we will help them integrate in Ontario as well. And our office is in Ontario, possibly, if it happens to be in a close distance to where they live. And if not, my connections in dental is I would call it quite well connected, that I can help them wherever the city they decide to move to, because I have a lot of good colleagues of mine who owns few offices, and they are always in need of dentists. When they need them, I will connect them.
I have 3 questions in the Q&A.
Yes.
There's one doctor that has put their hand up. So I wanted to go over some of the questions in the Q&A. And I think, but I do want to commend you. I think that the flexibility that you show in terms of finding the right associate, you know, I would say for the right location, and vice versa, finding the right location for the associate as well. I think that's really great. And yeah, I think we need to be fair. You know, we can't anticipate everything that happens, but we do need to be concerned about who's going to take the care of the patients after we leave. And that's why many contracts will have notice period built in, right?
Correct.
So that if you're leaving, and some of that may depend on what kind of work you're doing as well. What kind of cases, you know, are they bigger cases and treatments that continue, or is it just like sort of, you know, something that can more easily be taken over by another dentist? So I'm going to go from these questions in the order they came in. So one question is, if they can know the procedure to apply for a position and the criteria for recruitment. So there will be, we're going to send you a link to be able to, you know, apply for jobs or contact Dr. Marwan. But if you could say criteria, so what are you looking for in an associate? Maybe you can answer that in a general way.
Sure. I'm generally an associate. I mean, we'd love to see a person who is willing to learn as much as we are willing to learn from him or her. Because again, the beauty of dentistry, we continue to learn every day. There is a new procedure, a new approach, a new management system. And that's why we always go to courses. I'm talking to you, and on Wednesday, I'm flying to Vegas for a course. And that's the beauty of it. So the person has to be open to change, open to enhancing his or her skill sets, and willing to grow with the organization. Many of the associates, after a while, they ended up actually becoming partners. They loved it, where they ended up wanted to be part of this model, and they wanted to be owning part of this model, where we ended up building offices together or buying offices together. Some other group, no, they wanted to buy their own office, whether in Newfoundland or in Ontario or Manitoba. And I have many scenarios on both cases. So the associate, again, has to have ethics. And of course, that's by default. You guys are prep doctor graduates, so otherwise you wouldn't have been. So that part I'm not worried about. So ethically, patient care, customer service, if you will, because again, we are here to provide a service, and we need to always be mindful that those patients must get the best care possible. The Royal College has a guideline. Newfoundland has a guideline. Manitoba have a guideline. For me, I have a different guideline that sometimes exceeds theirs. Not that I'm undermining theirs, but I just want those patients to leave with a good experience. They will remember Dr. X that they saw in a very pleasant way. And part of our system, we like to go after those patients to put reviews on the doctors, which is going to help you all eventually in your career, whether you're by yourself or in another group practice or buying an office and such. So it's very important that we do the best dentistry we can. And I'm pretty sure that there's no need to talk about it. You guys are prep doctor again, but it's very important that the patient's experience is always at its best, because that's really what they're gonna remember. They may forgive you if you do a bad filling, but they will not forgive you if you were rude to them, even if you were the best filling with the curves and grooves and whatnot. But if they remember you in not a so pleasant way, eventually is going to come back. So that part is very important to me. Yeah.
I'm going to comment on that, your answer to that question, and I'm going to then go on to the next question in the Q&A. So the patient experience and ethical practice, of course, I mean, it builds a reputation, right? So, you know, you're concerned not just about your own reputation, the reputation of Smiles of Canada. And reputation, I mean, this is something you build as well as your skills, and it attracts more people who are like you. And you've mentioned Prep Doctors a lot of time, and I'm going to say to the audience, kind of, this is not a paid commercial or whatever. I mean, the reason I think that Dr. Marwan is talking about Prep Doctors is because he had a good experience with us. But I knew about Prep Doctors before I came here because they had such a good reputation amongst international dentists, and I have a number of international dentists amongst my friends, and I taught international dentists. So, that is, people do talk, and we want patients to think well of us, the communities that we practice in to think well of us. And this helps us to grow, right? Because then more people come to the practice looking for our care. So we have a question here about what does a typical week look like for an entry-level associate? So not somebody who will be, looking for partnership right now, but they're just, starting, in terms of time commitment at the clinic and earning potential. Now they've asked, et cetera, in Newfoundland and Labrador. So they are interested in the Newfoundland and Labrador opportunity. This is an anonymous question. Maybe you could speak a little bit about that. Like, are you looking for full-time associates? What are the hours that they would have to work? And how much can they expect reasonably to make if they were willing to move to Newfoundland and Labrador?
Well, in Newfoundland and Labrador, typically the clinics are open Monday to Friday. In Ontario, of course, we're open Saturdays, and I have one office that it's even open Sunday because it's a mall regulation. So in Newfoundland, they're very big on enjoying the weekend. Sometimes I open a Saturday here and there if I go and take care of my surgeries, but overall it's Monday to Friday. Some offices starts at 8 a.m. till 5, sometimes it's 9 to 6 and such, maybe one day 7 p.m. A typical schedule for an entry level, it's again based on his or her skill set. If it's an entry level, just like a new graduate from a dental school altogether, we will be, again, part of our onboarding, we will kind of go over the basic procedures that an entry-level dentist is expected to do, like an anterior root canal, because at the beginning they may be a little bit not comfortable, if you will, doing the 1-7 with an MB2 and finding the second canal, which will cause them stress by not finding it. So we all been there, done that, dealt with those stresses, and it's not fair to throw at him or her a wisdom extraction with a root canal on a 2-7, for example. So what we do, we slowly integrate them into the dentistry. Meaning that if he or she needs an hour and a half or 2 even to do a crown, so be it. Eventually, they're going to see that they will need lesser and lesser and lesser until they may do it within 45 minutes. Digital dentistry. Some people are familiar with it. Others are still impression-based kind of dentists, and that's beautiful. Then we will know that this is a very good topic for us to go over and teach them, because this is the future of dentistry, digital workflow. So the simple answer is that a typical office, if it's a really entry-level dentist, we give him only one column, means we give him one chair, that's his or hers, where we book them solid. Simple as that. Of course, cancellations happens because someone has COVID or patient couldn't make it. This happens in any part in this universe. But again, the difference is that when such a thing happens, there's patients on a waiting list who are waiting to fill that gap, which of course that luxury may not be always available in Toronto, let's call it. Financially, an average billing of a dentist there with a very, very, very average skill set is $40,000-$50,000 a month. Dentists with a higher skill set, or some dentists who started with a basic skill set and eventually started venturing into more advanced dentistry, I mean, one gentleman, without bringing his name, his last paycheck was $84,000. His last paycheck was $84,000. I hope I answered that part.
Yeah. So you said billings, but I mean, normally associateships are structured where there's a, it's on
Percentage.
collections. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
percentage
If you want to
collections.
go through the breakdown of the pay scale,
Yeah.
we have two opportunities in our organization. One of them is Ontario. The other one is out of the province. The Ontario is the standard way of payment, which is 40% of collection minus the lab bill, means that you do a crown. The lab bill of your crown, let's call it, is $300 by the lab you chose, whichever that lab is. So if the crown bill is $1,200, I believe now, or $1,100, I don't know the new fee guide for them. I haven't done crowns for a long time, but they take away the lab cost, and whatever the product collection, excuse me, is, 40% is the associates. And now I've been hearing some crazy numbers in certain offices offering 35 in Ontario, believe it or not. But for us, it's 40, standard care. Out of the province, it is 45 of collection, of billing, collection, excuse me. Unless the dentist comes from a different country with a specialty service in a certain discipline, whether it's ortho, endo, surgery, whatnot, then we will be opening the dialogue about eventually moving him or her to 50% of that specialty that he or she are offering. Yeah, have I answered that part? Sorry.
Yes, you have. So I have one other question and a very nice comment from one of our doctors who attended the NDEC course. So and has just taken the NDEC exam. So that will be so. This doctor is almost finished with the equivalency process, just waiting for the results, and then can move on to certification. So thank you very much for that comment. Now, the equivalency process question I'm going to come back to. I'm going to let the doctor who has their hand up speak and ask the question that they have directly to Dr. Marwan.
I just have a quick question for Dr. Marwan. So you have this like very known practice. You have 18 clinics. Just want to know, like, did you buy these clinic already running, or did you just build those from the scratch?
The ones out of the province, they were all already running with a patient base on them. Okay. In Ontario, some of them were already running, but most of them, I built them from scratch.
And how is the patient fee guide for out of province? I am from BC, but I don't know, like, how is Newfoundland? Let's say the root
Well,
canal.
it's quite similar to here. Yeah, there is plus minus. I mean, for example, in Manitoba, I think it's more to, it's more in root canals. It's quite similar in extraction. So there is plus minus $10, $20 here and there. But I would like to say it has a big similarity to what we do here.
Okay. Yeah, I think that answers my question. Pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. And I know when we were speaking on the phone, Dr. Marwan, you mentioned that you have opportunities in Ontario, in Grimsby and Orangeville. Is that correct?
That is correct. And of course, Newfoundland in Torbay, which is close to the capital, St. John's. Another one in Gander, and another one in Grand Falls. Those are big cities in Newfoundland. But again, when we say big to their standards probably is smaller to ours. The new opportunity that just came in is in Brandon City in Manitoba. Manitoba is a very wealthy province. It's mostly farmlands, and that office is actually my, how should I call it, my flagship. It has 7 ops, it has 3 hygienists, it has 15,000 patients. The number of new patients every month is about 70 to 80, sometimes 100. So it's like a rocket ship. And that is an office that associates historically made fantastic production along with fantastic experience. And I don't know, brought them good luck where they ended up buying offices back in Ontario or elsewhere. Back to the Ontario one, Grimsby and Orangeville. Just like what the other gentleman asked, those two offices are from scratch. So they are not very busy. We are willing, if someone is interested in getting a day where we can book him up there, him or her. Grimsby, it's a medical center. It has about 6,000 patients, medical, pharmacy that I have there, and the dental, of course. Our office just got opened 2 months ago, so it's still brand new office. It gets about 40 to 50 patients a month, which is reasonable, 47 last month. So it's in the growing phase. So if someone is interested in just having a floater date that he or she wants to fill among their schedule in Ontario, this could be a good fit. Unlikely it's a good fit for somebody who wants to stay there 5 days a week, because they may not be busy. Again, same to support the discussion about how Ontario is compared to other provinces.
And I'm happy that you mentioned Brandon. So, you know, I don't know a lot about the geography of the rest of the country. So how far is Brandon from the capital of that province, Winnipeg?
It's 2 hours and 6 minutes from airport to airport, or from airport to the office door. So usually the way I do it, I land in the morning, get a car and drive to the office and work. It's a very smooth ride. But again, when we talk about the commute, it's 2 hours and such. Okay. I've heard about people here commuting an hour already back and forth to work, for example, because of the 401 and the rush hour, etc. The difference again is it's much cheaper lifestyle there. Gas is cheaper, rent is cheaper, everything is cheaper.
Yeah. And I think, you know, what you're saying about the commute. Yeah. I mean, like you said, an hour to get across the city or more. Right. Yeah. I live in, Western Etobicoke, close to Mississauga. So if I need to go to Scarborough or to, you know,
good luck.
Yeah. You have to leave really early in the morning for that. I think that, you know, when you're looking at numbers like 20, let's say 20, 30 people a month in Ontario, and then something like 70, 80, you said, in Brandon. I mean, it seems to me, I'm guessing, but you can confirm if this is true or not, the 20, 30 that you're getting in Mississauga may be jumping from another office. And you know, I mean, you hope that they stay with you, but you know, I think that if you're someplace where there's a waiting list, where there's a need, where there aren't as many dentists, you know, you do have the opportunity to develop a patient base from, you know, with a long-term kind of time frame. So, okay. So this is, well, the doctor, I don't think, was satisfied with my other answer, because it says, sorry for repeating my question, but is there a way to improve clinical skills during the equivalency process? I spend extra time in the sim lab if you're taking a skills course. I mean, I think it's hard, right? Because if you're legally, you can't practice on patients, right? You have to work on a simulation. And so you need to get access to the simulation, you know, the mannequin head, the equipment that you need. I know that, you know, when people take our courses, they take they buy the equipment themselves, but they also basically, by enrolling in the course, they have the opportunity to practice. Plus they have feedback from instructors. So, but it sounded like the doctor is not in Canada yet, or not to stay yet. So I think that may be the difficulty in that case. Now somebody is asking, what is the average income if someone is interested in the Manitoba office?
Well, again, I would say same thing applies. I mean, I've seen some months when certain doctors did over 60,000 a month. I've seen initially they started with 40 until they build that skill set, but eventually they become too busy where they ended up kind of taking time off because they were overworking. So the answer, if I can make it as simple, I mean, I know for a fact that I haven't seen a dentist making less than 50, 60 a month. That's the average, answering the question.
We do have another question. Okay, Dr. Ken.
Hi, firstly, I would appreciate all this discussion, and I'm getting to know more about DSO. So I have two questions. The first one is there any specific prerequisite, or I should rephrase it as an ideal CV in order to apply, like what exactly should be our skill set? And my second question is regarding provincial licensure exam, suppose I'm relocating from Ontario to Newfoundland, do I have to sit in the provincial licensure board again, and that part of thing, how that is taken care of?
Okay, excellent question. Basically, your CV, doctor, I mean, there's no specific prerequisites. Again, just like you're applying to any office here, you submit your resume or CV and we review it and see your skill sets. And then we ask to meet you. And from that point onward, we're going to show you the options that are available that we feel is a good fit to your skill sets, of course. So there's no particular prerequisites or specific skill set that you must have or should not have. As per the licensing, the moment, again, part of the onboarding process, my team usually will start working with you in the licensing process in that province. So answering you if there is interest in Newfoundland particularly, the process is quite fast, basically, where again, the regional manager that I have in charge of that province will be working with you one-on-one in filling the forms, contacting our contacts there in the board, starting the process. They do require a certain insurance called CDSPI, which is a little bit different than Ontario. Ontario, it's part of the annual fees that we pay the college. It has insurance built in that fee. That's why the fee is too high, in my opinion. But over there in Newfoundland, for example, no, they have it broken down that there's a fee for being member in the board, which is like our RCDSO called National, what is it called? Newfoundland Labrador Dental Board, excuse me. And there is insurance. Now that insurance is like, think about it like a car insurance where you pay it monthly, and that gives you a $2 million insurance on dental liability. Now, the beauty of that insurance, this could help you in Newfoundland, in Ontario, in Manitoba, because the other provinces, they go by that CDSPI insurance. Ontario is unique that it doesn't. So the regional manager will work with you hand on hand until we get that license acquired. It requires, if you happen to be licensed in Ontario, something called letter of good standing to show that there's no issues in Ontario. I'm not sure if they require anything else. It's a very simple process, quite unlike the one in Ontario. It's not as time consuming, it's not as tacky. It's just a form that's maybe 2-3 pages. And again, the manager will work with you until you get that. It took the other gentleman maybe 10 days to get that license. So it was very straightforward.
See, that's great. And it seems that you've given a lot of thought to what a new practitioner who's moving to a new part of the province. So you can see that. So the question is, if you're preparing for an equivalency, so again, I love the fact that people who are still in the equivalency process are with us today, and they want to get Canadian experience in a dental office, does Smiles of Canada provide some shadowing or dental assisting positions? And this doctor's interested in Newfoundland. What do you think? Is there any possibility?
Well, the answer is yes. In fact, right now, 4 or 5 of prep doctor students or people going through the equivalency happens to be working with us. And funny story is last Tuesday, I interviewed another who applied for a dental assistant position. And when I read that she is in the prep doctor, actually, I got excited that this is a good fit in our organization. I mean, believe it or not, many of people who are working with me when they are dentists from back home, I ask them to go work, get their they go to prep doctor, because I know that they're going to come back and work with us, hopefully, when they finish that journey. Shadowing, it's yes, we do offer that. However, usually we do 1 per office, and sometimes they stay for a month or so. So I always will say, reach out to any of our managers and see if there is any shadowing opportunities available, and you're all more than welcome to come in and shadow. Dental assisting, yes, we have right now 1, 2, Well, in Mississauga, I have 3 prep doctor assistants. I have 2 admin. I have 1 treatment coordinator, and they're all in prep doctor as we speak. So we do welcome prep doctor graduates or students, if I may call them. Yeah.
Oh, that's super. So somebody's asking whether you have any proposed locations in BC, because this doctor would like to join your DSO and is wondering if you're expanding to the West Coast.
Wow. Well, actually, I was in BC, I would say 6-7 weeks ago, looking at a potential opportunity. So I'm always open to expanding more. And BC, to me, that's my hometown. So I love it. And actually, I was looking at an office in a little bit rural to Vancouver, if that's what it is. It's a little bit up north in a place called Smithers. That's a bit too far, but it's a beautiful spot. So yes, the answer is yes. If anyone is interested in having such a dialogue, please reach out to me and we can have a good talk about it and go from there.
I think it's amazing that in your time in Canada, I mean, really how large your DSO has grown to become, and you have big plans, and certainly we're happy if some people who take courses with us can find a good associateship and stay with your organization even. I mean, go to different practices, possibly become a partner, purchase. That sounds neat. So I'm going to say thank you very much to Dr. Marwan. It sounds like a wonderful operation that you have. I love the fact that there's this long association with prep doctors, and that, if you hear prep doctors, you want to hire the grads. And yeah, I mean, I vouch for the education here for sure. I mean, I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy that we have so much interest in the opportunities now that we're talking about. Everybody can join the Prep Doctors community group on Facebook. That's where Dr. Marwan first posted about his positions. And if any more come up, if you could let me know specifically, I'm happy to post them there as well. Do you have any final comments, Dr. Marwan?
Actually, I just want to thank you all again for giving me the opportunity to speak to you all. And I am really looking forward in having more of those webinars in any topic, whether it's related to the dental, to the business side of dentistry. I'm pretty sure some of you eventually will have interest in buying or building or associating or owning or partnering. So all these things are beautiful topics eventually we can have a good dialogue about in the future. Looking forward to it. And thank you for hosting me today, Doctor.
Oh, you're very welcome. And, I love to hear the passion for teaching that you have in your voice when you talk about your upcoming webinar or session rather.
Thank you.
That you're doing and just the opportunity to do more. We'll continue to stay in contact, right? And everybody should. I would welcome. Everybody should join the Prep Doctors community group, because that's where we're posting the specific opportunities that doctors tell us about in DSOs and elsewhere. Thank you so much for speaking with us this evening, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you very much. Have a very good day.